Hi guys, Thierry Rocks here, today bringing you another album review. We're going to go back to basics, go back to my roots a little bit, and talk about more sort of like, new metal, alt metal, post-grunge music, rather than the sort of Britpop, indie rock, soft rock that I've been talking about a lot more recently. And stay tuned to the end of this video, because I've got a little teaser for something. So, just wait and see. So yes guys, today I shall be reviewing an album that's been requested for quite a long time, well, almost 3 years. And that review is Trust Company's second studio album, True Parallels. According to Wikipedia, this album was supposed to be released in 2004, but ended up being delayed to March of 2005. So quite interesting to look at this one, really. This album is 20 years old, which is just wow. I can't even believe that. I mean, back in 2005, I'd never heard of these guys or this type of music in general, but like, that was a big year in my childhood. So like, it's pretty crazy to think of just, time isn't slowing down, unfortunately. Now, most of you probably know Trust Company from their big hit song Downfall, and trust me, that is an amazing song, but it is far from their only good song. In fact, that whole album, which I reviewed quite a few years ago, The Lonely Position of Neutral, is probably somewhere in like my top 5 favorite albums like within the nu metal genre. This album, it released in 2002, right during the peak of that sort of like the more melodic side of nu metal was getting really big, thanks to Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park releasing a couple years earlier. This one truly captures that like sound, kind of a mix between, Linkin Park, a little bit of Deftones with like the whisper vocals, but the musicianship is still heavy. There's still plenty of screams. It absolutely nailed that kind of like nighttime kind of feel that the music has. But by 2005, when they decided to release their second album, the genre of nu metal was, I wouldn't say it was dead, but it had definitely like fallen, from relevancy, like quite a bit. Most of the mainstream bands had either like changed genres, or a lot of the smaller bands had broken up by then. Genres like emo and post-hardcore and metalcore, even the sort of like more like radio-friendly rock, the sort of like indie garage rock kind of scene, that was getting very popular as well. So this album in itself actually kind of goes in a little bit of a different direction, and you can probably tell by the album cover here, like what sound they were going for. But yeah, as far as I know, all the same musicians who were on The Lonely Position of Neutral were on this one. Not much had changed, really. Before we get into the music, though, we're going to look at the album cover. So yeah, the album art is a close-up of a woman's face with a very sort of like red and black like color scheme. The back of the album cover has like the same woman like sitting there, like a full body shot, and for some reason the tracks are like sideways. Inside of it you have each of the band members' faces there, which fun fact, Trust Company actually reunited a couple years ago, like very recently, and yeah, the original lineup, these 4 guys are still together. So all things aside, a lot of these types of bands of the era just couldn't seem to get along with each other, and that wasn't really possible, so that's really neat. And we're continuing like the red color scheme. The disc here is like bright red, blood red, and when I remove the disc as well, you get a cool picture of the band, with a sunset behind them. Also, another thing I noticed is a lot of the 2005 albums had like the FBI warning, because I think this was way past the point where like Napster and file sharing was a thing. So like they really wanted to warn people, like, yeah, if you if you steal this music or whatever, or like rip it without consent, you can be arrested for it. But yeah, moving on from that, because that's a completely different kettle of fish there. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive into the album True Parallels. Okay, the opening track is Stronger. Now, this song, I'll probably say, other than Downfall being their biggest hit, Stronger is probably like their second most well-known song, which is quite a good thing considering that like this was like a whole new album. But yeah, this was a big hit. It wasn't my first Trust Company song, but it was my second one. I found it from a game called MX vs ATV Unleashed. It was a dirt bike and quad bike racing game on PS2 and Xbox. I had it on PS2. And yeah, that game had lots of great music on it. You know, it had Crossfade on it, Shine Down, Earshot, which I might review them one day. Lots of great music. Rise Against as well. But yeah, this song kind of shows you the sort of direction that this album went in. So yeah, it was 2005. What did Trust Company do? Well, they decided to go in a more emo rock direction. You know, emo, post-hardcore, that sort of thing. Now, emo does get a bad rep, like, depending who you ask. It's gotten a little bit, like, more nostalgic over the years, but, like, you know, I'm personally, like, I like the heavier side of the genre. I don't particularly like pop punk or any of the super mainstream bands. Just not my cup of tea, a bit cringy to me. But this, you know, this song right here, an album, kind of goes into the sort of side of emo that I like. Stronger is, like, a very anthemic song. You know, it has very sort of like uplifting lyrics and everything like that. You know, obviously it's about not letting anybody, you know, take you down. And that's exactly what the chorus is. And I am stronger now, since you've fallen away, since you've crawled away. I am stronger now. You know, it is like very catchy, very memorable. It is such a great song. I could definitely see this song was like probably a staple, like during sort of concerts of theirs. You know, it got the crowd going wild. It's honestly a great song. I can see why it was a big hit. The music video also like shows footage of like the band, you know, at a skate park, which is you know, very 2005 energy. I honestly love it. Moving on to the next song is The War Is Over. This song wasn't a single, but I think it like was like a fairly popular song with the fans and things. It definitely reminds me of a song that would have been used in like AMVs, you know, for the time. And you know how much I love, you know, AMVs and just the spirit and culture of just like, you know, fan-made music videos to like songs like this. I like the verses. The hours devour. It's for you. Stop and love to me. And then like you build into that sort of like chorus. I surrender. The war is over. They're waiting for this. For you. Your eyes are haunted by what you wanted, and I surrender. The war is over. Like it has like a very like uplifting energy to it. It reminds me very much of like an end credit song, or like, you know, typical heroes have beaten the villains kind of like vibe. But yeah, this is a really good song. Again, not necessarily you know, anything nu metal like The Lonely Position of Neutral had. It's very much sort of more alt rock, you know, slightly sort of like emo, post-hardcore type rock. It's a pretty chill song, and obviously it makes you think of sort of like, you know, war imagery and sort of like VE Day in like 1945, you know. The next song, track number 3, is Surfacing. Not the Slipknot song, just has a similar title. This song is a lot more sort of like nu metal. It's got those sort of riffs. I like the chorus hook. I'm changing inside, I'm changing inside. You can find me surfacing. And you actually do get some like pretty good screams from Kevin Palmer. Surfacing! You know, it's pretty damn cool, honestly. The lyrics are quite tropey for like the genre, you know. It's about like feeling yourself like changing inside, you know, obviously, you know. I think I mentioned this in the Lonely Position and Neutral album review, but I'm not going to analyze the lyrics in particular because they are sort of like, you know, angsty like sort of topics, you know, very much like self-focused, you know. There's no sort of like, there's nothing too wild or experimental here, but it really works and they really sell it. Okay, the next track, number 4, is Slave. Now this one is also one of my favourite songs on the album. You know, it kind of starts off a bit slow, but then it goes into the sort of like, they're like more alternative rock kind of like riffs, and then the drums actually decide to like speed up, and then they slow down for the chorus, and I do really like the hook in the chorus. The slave in me, oh, I'm flying again, I'm so close to the edge, I can feel the slave in me. But yeah, I do really enjoy the chorus in this song. It is quite memorable and fun. For some reason as well, it's very sort of like Linkin Park-esque. Reminds me a little bit of like Faint for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, but it just does. Okay, the next track is Fold, which funny fact here, that's also the name of an Unloco song. You know, another sort of similar like alternative new metal type band. I reviewed their album like a few years ago now actually. Yeah, this song is like a little bit more new metal sounding, but like the verses are quite like quiet and atmospheric. You know, typical kind of like, I say Trust Company are quite like known for that. But I do like the chorus up. You wanna replace me, you can't even face me, and you hold me down. But yeah, other than that, not got much to say about this song. You know, typical lyrics about, you know, somebody who has like wronged you or hurt you, and you know, not taking their shit basically. But yeah, it's pretty generic, this one, so I'm gonna move on. Next track, The Reflection. Another kind of similar one. It has like a quiet like opening, you know, sort of like just a bit of a bass line and a bit of guitar, then it like goes into that sort of like, you know, gets right back into it, and like the verses are quite atmospheric, and then obviously it builds into that sort of like more alternative rocky sounding chorus. But yeah, this song, I mean, I do like the break in the skin line, but other than that, this song's pretty generic, not really my cup of tea, but it's definitely not bad, just another kind of like skippable song. That's what it is, I guess. Luckily though, the next two tracks are like two really good ones that I can talk about. They are Breaking Down and Someone Like You. So yeah, track 7, Breaking Down. I do really like this one. It has a bit of drums at the start, but then it goes into those like really sort of bouncy like riffs that I really enjoy in my like rock and metal music, you know. Like, I really enjoy those. The verses are okay, but then it's the chorus that I like really dig. So how can I go on when you break me down? When you break me down, it's tearing me apart. Trust Company are just great at like, you know, sort of like generic like lyrics, but just putting their like heart and soul into that writing, you know. It's really great. I also like the middle of the song when it's got one of those like emotional hooks. I will promise to stand by you. I love that bit. I don't know what it is, but it just like really gets to me. But yeah, Breaking Down. This one is also like really fun. It's definitely like a bit of a headbanger. Track number 8 after that is Someone Like You. No, not the Adele song, which would like follow, you know, several years later. You know, some like sappy, sad Adele song, whatever. But yeah, this one is a bit more of a, I guess I would say a power ballad in a sort of way. It's not straight up like riff centric or anything. It's kind of a bit more of an emo, like alternative rock kind of song, you know. I really like the guitars. It's also got those like high-pitched guitars that you would kind of hear in more sort of like emo type rock, post-hardcore, that sort of thing. I'm going to be saying that a lot in this review. It kind of has the vibe of like something that would have been in like a high school movie at the time for some reason. You know, like a movie like Grind or something like that. I know that's about skateboarding, but still. I really like the chorus. I needed someone just like you. I needed you. I needed someone just like you. I needed you. It actually is like a bit of a love song, which is like a little bit different for these guys. So pretty damn cool. I really like this one. Okay, the next track is Crossing the Line. Again, by the title, I think you can tell it's obviously about, you know, someone breaking those boundaries and hurting you, you know. pretty sort of like common trope in this type of genre, you know. It starts off, you know, kind of like a slowish intro, and then goes into sort of like some pretty good riffs. I don't know what it is, I really dig songs that kind of have like that drum beat where it's like purposefully, you know, makes you want to bounce and like bang your head. I just really enjoy that. But yeah, I will say I'm not really into the song. It's a bit generic, a bit forgettable. This is kind of like where you noticed a lot of the songs just kind of like mold together, like in my mind. You know, no offense to Trust Company, but they're starting to sound a little bit samey at this point. I do like the chorus though, like, shine my eyes, I lost myself 1,000 times. I do really like that line for some reason. I also like in the middle of the song where it kind of like goes from just drums on their own to... And you know, it's that kind of like yelling, I locked myself from you, from you, from you! Which, like, that screaming that Kevin Palmer does makes me think of, like, you know, the late Chester Bennington, so yeah. Moving on though from like another generic song, we have actually my favorite track on the album, and probably one of my favorite Trust Company songs of all time, and that is track number 10, Silently. This is like a straight up power ballad. It starts off with like very sort of dreamy, melodic like guitars, and then Kevin Palmer's like more softer kind of voice. This time I am the one to play. And then the chorus is just like absolutely beautiful. This time the voice is screaming as I scream silently. I feel so far away from healing, so I'm stepping back inside, sitting back here silently. This time the voice is screaming, it screams in me silently, and it leads back into those sort of like, you know, atmospheric like guitars. You also can kind of hear like string instruments in the background, which I really appreciate in like rock music in general, you know, when it does that type of thing. Yeah, this song is definitely way more like emo type rock than anything, you know, new metal or alt metal related, but I absolutely love it. Maybe it's just my taste changing. I've listened to this song a lot this year for some reason, just when I'm like walking about, listening to music in my headphones. It just really resonated with me for some reason. It's also one of those songs that would fit in like, maybe like a high school drama type movie, maybe in another AMV or anime in general. I just love this song. I think it's wonderful. It's definitely the song on this album that I go out of my way to like listen to the most, for sure. I love this song. Silently is great. Okay, we're getting back into like the heavy material with the track Erased. Yeah, it does that thing like the other songs on this album do, where like the verses are quite like drawn out. The guitars in particular feel kind of drawn out, like while like the drums are just going away and like the singer is like continuing. But then like the chorus is like quite, you know, light and alternative rock sounding, you know. I almost feel erased. But yeah, not too much to say about this one. It is on the more sort of like generic side. It's not particularly one that I go back to a lot, unfortunately. This is the, well, technically the final track on the album, Without a Trace. This song is just a straight up like acoustic ballad. Reminds me a little bit of like Nutshell by Alice in Chains in just the way that it plays out. It just has those like very sort of like melancholic like acoustic guitar work, and then like at the end as well. And like this is the kind of song that makes me think of like a character that's like wandering in just kind of like aimlessly in a wasteland, or like they've lost everything, or they're just directionless. And also the lyrics as well kind of make me think of that as well. I can't remember anything to save me from this place again, lost without a trace again. That is like also the song ends with that, just Kevin just repeating like lost without a trace again, as like the guitars like begin to stop, and it's just him singing with that sort of like echoey reverb, lost without a trace, with just like a drum set just playing in the background, which just give it that kind of like hopeless kind of sound to it, you know. It's my only complaint about this song is that it's like just too short. A lot of the songs on this album as well only run for about 2 minutes something, which is like what I noticed. But yeah, this song in particular, it just like, you know, it comes and it just goes, and it kind of like, you know, makes me want to listen to it again, you know. But yeah, Without a Trace, this is a great ballad. It's also interesting that the last 3 songs kind of like relate to each other if you like say them out loud, you know. Silently erased without a trace. You know, that kind of feeling that your entire being, well, is meaningless, essentially. But yeah, that song is actually not the final track on the album. Spotify says it's a hidden track, but the CD has a bunch of silent tracks, and we finally get the hidden one. It's not in the back of this. It's called Retina, which is another sort of, it goes into the more sort of like new metal kind of like aspect to it. I really do enjoy the riffs in this song. I do like the chorus like lyrics though. I can't forget you, and like the following line, I see right through you. You know, typical sort of Trust Company-esque lyrics there. But yeah, that's the final track. And that was True Parallels. So what did I think of it? As you kind of notice me going through the songs, this album is just a bit too generic for me. Like, the good songs on this album are like really good, you know, obviously Stronger, The War Is Over, the ballads like Silently and Without a Trace, you know, Breaking Me Down. A lot of these songs though, they just kind of like meld into one in my mind. So it kind of makes it like a difficult listen in that kind of sense. That is also a big reason why I've delayed this album for so long, was that I just didn't have a lot to say with like the songs individually. That's like no offense to Trust Company though, you know, they're perfectly talented. I will say, like, you know, this album as well is a lot more polished than The Lonely Position and Neutral. But at the same time, it's like they didn't really kind of commit to the genre they were doing. You know, it isn't heavy enough and bouncy enough or aggressive enough to be nu metal like The Lonely Position and Neutral was, but it also goes into the whole sort of like emo rock post-hardcore, but it doesn't like fully commit to it. Like, none of these songs are like particularly go as hard as like, you know, Silverstein or The Used, or, you know, From First to Last, some other bands like that from the time. It doesn't really go into that style much either, which is like, you know, it's a bit of a missed opportunity, really. You know, it tries to, but it's just not fully there. And you get a bunch of songs which are just sound the same as each other, and that is a big complaint for me. Now, I am like a massive Trust Company fan, but I always found it difficult to kind of be like, you know, this album was always like, I want to really love it. I want to like love this album, but it's just, you know, other than my favorite songs, it's not one that I really go back to often. I actually had a similar opinion to The Lonely Position and Neutral when I first listened to it. I thought some of the songs weren't as good as maybe like Downfall and Falling Apart, but I did give that one multiple listens and it grew on me, and now that's like an all-time favorite. But this one, it just hasn't grown on me as much. Maybe it kind of reflects in the band too, because, you know, they wouldn't make another full album again until 2011 with like Dreaming in Black and White, which like I barely even remember that album, to be honest with you, which isn't really like the band's fault though, because like that style of music was definitely like way out by then. I'd say even like during this time they were kind of like struggling. But yeah, hopefully with the band actually back together again, touring in America at least, maybe they actually will work on, like, you know, more material perhaps. It's also interesting as well that like The Lonely Position and Neutral, I think it actually was certified gold, like 500,000 copies or something like that. This one sold about 200,000, which, you know, obviously this was the time of like iPods and like digital streaming was starting to get big in MP3s rather than CDs. But yeah, I'm just not super into this album. Like, if Lonely Position in Neutral is like, I don't know, a high 8 out of 10, a low 9 out of 10, this album is like a high 6 out of 10, low 7 out of 10. I don't think I could give it, honestly, a higher rating than that. Sorry to everyone who, like, loves this album, as well as it, like, turning 20 this year. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. There'll be more to come. I've just been quite busy this summer, and I hope you understand. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe, and peace. Have a good one.